Well, I want to introduce you to this kid named Alex. Alex, you might think of him as a super smart, capable, well liked social kid, around 19 years old, freshman in college. But when it comes to making big life decisions, he's always struggled. He doesn't, if you to press him, doesn't really know who he is, what he believes, or what he values. And frankly, he's just kind of following the crowd. He's just kind of going through the motions. He chooses business as a major, not because he loves it, but because his parents have mentioned many times that's the smart choice. That's where the jobs are. Deep down, if you were to kind of pay attention to what he's talked about and pursued in terms of interests over the years, you would have noticed storytelling, filmmaking, but he never really explored it. He didn't really assume that it was like a real career. So there's this like belief gap that he has. He never really questioned what his thoughts are, what his beliefs are about what a successful life is all about. Nor has he really clarified his values. He doesn't really know if he like prioritizes creativity and making a mark in the world or stability and security. So he kind of waffles and struggles. He ends up getting, a few internships, but he's relatively unmotivated. Doesn't really have a lot to say when you ask him about his future. And in fact, if you asked him and kind of pressed him, he would say he's more or less dreading this career that he's on this path towards. And deep down, he wonders why he feels so empty when everyone around him seems to just be like on fire and passionate and excited about the future. He doesn't know that it's because he's never really clarified his fundamental beliefs or his core values. He starts dating this girl who really gets into this unhealthy relationship with, and she's like constantly criticizing him, belittling him. And he's got friends who will kind of stick up for him and say, hey, this is just not a good relationship. She doesn't treat you right. And he just kind of shrugs and says, well, I love her. And I guess this is just the way it is. So the belief gap, he's never really considered what he thinks about himself and what he deserves and what he wants in terms of a healthy relationship. He's never really decided if he values respect and kindness or like the security of being in a relationship. So he tolerates essentially mistreatment and emotional manipulation, thinking that's just how relationships are. His friends get into partying in college, and even though he like feels uncomfortable with it, it's not something his family really like modeled for him. In fact, quite the opposite. He's lacking this internal compass, and so he more or less just goes along with it. And he caught up in the sense of like this is, I guess this is just fun. I guess fitting in is more important than following my own sense of what's right or what's wrong. And he's never really figured out if he values being authentic and steadfast to a sense of what he believes in is better than being accepted and getting approval from friends. So he consistently makes choices that don't align with who he is and actually have harm for him in the future. And he's living in this constant state of anxiety and feeling kind of lost. And so what I'm describing clearly are very real scenarios that you could almost pick anybody that any family that has more than one kid who's around that age, and you would see symptoms of someone who doesn't really understand their own fundamental beliefs and values. And what you see is evidence of them drifting rather than them making like intentional choices. You see them ending up in a career that feels fulfilling because they didn't really know what else to do. You watch and they effectively tolerate unhealthy, immature, bad relationships because they've never really clarified their own sense of self-worth. And they effectively allow others to play the role of executive functioning for their lives, letting others decide what you do and what you prioritize and what you believe in. And this can all be avoided. Here's the point. This can all be avoided if this kid, Alex, had taken the time to explore what he truly believes in and values, which would then turn into a career that is more aligned to what he's drawn to intrinsically. setting boundaries in relationships and just valuing his own self-respect over just being with somebody, and making way better choices when he's faced with peer pressure and going with the flow. Last week, if you haven't tuned in yet, you might want to. It's a whole episode helping parents think about how do you guide your kids to reflect and declare their core values. Today, what I want to get into is very similar, but it's distinctly different. It's how do you help somebody reflect on and declare their fundamental beliefs. Now, let me try to kind of parse these two things out. Values are what you think are important in life. It's how you prioritize and rank your decisions. And as I talked about last week, there is this kind of dual process where, on one hand, as parents, I believe it's our role and opportunity to share, this is what we as a family have found and discovered is most important to us. And we like to present that to you, kid, and we like for you to consider that and likely adapt to something that makes sense for you, or adopt it all, wholeheartedly. But it has to be your own. It has to be something that you choose. Today, on the other side of values would be beliefs. Values are what you think is important, but beliefs are what you think is true about the world, about yourself, about other people, about your place in all of this. Your values will decide and guide your decisions. Your beliefs will shape your perspective and how you interpret reality. So they're connected, but they're separate. So these would be belief statements. People are generally good. Value statement would be honesty matters most. So that's prioritizing, that's ranking. A belief statement would be hard work pays off. A value statement would be helping others is important and something I want to do more than other things. Beliefs come from experience. They come from your family. They come from your culture. They come from your religion, your spirituality, your sense of this overall meta narrative about how the world works. But they also come from media. They also come from social media. They also come from your friends. They come from your teachers. And there's these beliefs that kind of get threaded into someone's life. And the most important thing to do is to be able to kind of parse those out, look at them one at a time. And again, the you part in YouSchool is every kid needs the opportunity, I would say deserves the opportunity, to go through a process to define and declare their own. And even to look at other people and say, okay, based on what I see and based on what I hear, this is what they value. This is what they believe in. And it manifests, it looks like this. For me, I want it to be more like that. And it's iterative. It's this process that you have to go through. Beliefs shape your self-image. I believe I'm capable of. I believe tomorrow will be better when or if. I believe that I have what it takes. Values determine what you're striving to become. I value perseverance, so I keep going. Interconnected, but distinctly different. So a series of statements that would be helpful to think about. What do you believe is right? What do you believe is good? What do you believe is beautiful? What do you believe you are here to do? What do you believe this whole thing is all about? Education is the key to success. That's a belief statement. Lifelong learning is important. That's a value. Money can't buy happiness. Belief. I prioritize relationships over the pursuit of wealth. That's a value. So what do you think is true? What do you think is most important? And almost like everything in every conversation that we have, is we go through these 30 critical questions that every kid must answer in order to be prepared to lead and build a fulfilling, meaningful life where they flourish and thrive with a clear identity, a strong sense of purpose, and close relationships of belonging. Those three pillars roll up through the series of answering questions to build the foundation for a meaningful, flourishing life. As we walk through all these questions, the punchline is always coming back to you, the parents, the adults in kids' lives, to have the most and effective impact on the kids that you care about. The most important thing you can do is for you to reflect on the same stuff, is for you to think about what do you believe in? What do you believe is true? What do you think is just? What do you think is right? What do you believe is ultimately the best way to live? What do you believe is the reason we're here? And the more clarity you get on that, my encouragement is step 1, clarify it. Step 2, share it. Share it with a strong asterisk. Here's what I've learned and discovered to be true about my fundamental beliefs. And I want to share that with you because the way identity formation works, the way strong, healthy adults are made is by having fixed points to react to. So your kids need to hear from you, need to see expressed in your life, in your choices, in your behavior, in your language. They need to hear and then have you interpret what this means, where it comes from, so that they can look at it, examine it, digest it, rearrange it, and ultimately choose something like that. And it might be exactly the same thing, like I said, adopting it outright, or it might be adapting it to fit more into how they've experienced the world and their perspective. But what we don't want to do is just say, figure it out. Life is all about the adventure of you figuring out why you're here, what you're here to do, how to live life well. I'm sure you'll be fine. Rather, the greater gift we can give our kids is to say, this is what I've discovered, this is what I've found, and here's where it comes from, and here's why, and here's what I think about that. And I want you to consider it. And ultimately, you school, you need to figure out what you think and what you believe. So rolling back to that kid, Alex, to go through a process of reflection, which likely includes writing, which likely includes talking. But the first start of that is knowing what questions to ask. For that kid, Alex, to have greater clarity about what he believes about himself, about the world, about his place in it, will help him make choices about how to invest his time in terms of learning and education and career. It'll help him know how to navigate complex relationships, to have better clarity to navigate through conflict and say, nope, this is what I believe in. This is what I value. So therefore, we're going to shift things. When he's with a group of friends, he's going to be able to say, no, I'm not going to do that. That's not what I believe in. That's not what I value. And his friends will, some of them might be like, bro, what's wrong with you? Most of them will just say, okay. And in fact, his own clarification might embolden them, strengthen them to find their own. That's how this all works. So if you care about your kids, this is, I know you do. It's a silly question. I want to encourage you to take the time and energy to think and clarify, at least again, what you believe to be right, good, true, and beautiful. And then find the opportunity to share that with your kids. And right behind that, to ask them the same questions that you're wrestling with, same questions that you're thinking about. What do you believe? What do you believe? We'll be back next week with another episode of the YouSchool podcast.